Most personal finance advice tells you that you are poor because you buy too many lattes or lack discipline. They treat your bank account as a reflection of purely individual choices. But for women in long-term relationships, the math of money does not happen in a vacuum. There is a hidden financial tax that never gets line-itemed on a budget spreadsheet, yet it drains your wealth-building capacity every single month. It is a phenomenon called relational debt. Relational debt doesn't show up as your fault on paper, but it shows up in your balance. Over the next 20 minutes, we are going to look at the exact mechanisms of this trap, why your identity as a supportive partner is being weaponized against your wealth, and how to stop paying for emotional peace with your financial future. Let that land. To understand why this happens, we have to look at the underlying mechanism of identity cost. People do not make financial decisions based on pure economic logic. They make them to sustain a narrative about who they are. For women, society tethers the identity of being a good partner or a good mother to the willingness to absorb friction. When a household system threatens to crack, you step in to absorb the blow. According to data from the United Nations from 2026, women perform over 2.5 times more unpaid care and domestic work than men globally. This care penalty represents billions in foregone potential earnings and savings due to unbalanced household distributions. In practice, this means you spend your time managing the invisible logistics of life while your partner retains the time and cognitive bandwidth to focus on income generation or rest. You purchase the groceries, order the kids' clothing, and organize the household repairs, often paying out of your own pocket to avoid an argument or to keep the home running smoothly. Every micro expense feels insignificant in isolation, but when multiplied across years, it shifts the foundational balance of wealth. You are effectively subsidizing the relationship's operational costs while draining your own investment capital. You believe you are just being a loving partner, but the economic reality is that you are paying a compounding premium for relational stability. The structural trap begins with a quiet shift in daily logistics. When a couple moves in together or starts a family, expenses are rarely divided based on true economic impact. They are divided by visibility. You agree to split the rent or mortgage 50-50. That looks clean on paper. But then the invisible operational costs of the relationship begin to accumulate. You find yourself paying for the groceries, the household cleaning supplies, the children's vitamins, and the unexpected school fees. These are micro expenses. They are immediate, urgent, and deeply connected to the daily comfort of the home. Because they happen in increments of $20, $50, or $80, they do not trigger an alarm. Your partner's credit card is reserved for the large, fixed bills, while your card is swiped multiple times a day for the relational maintenance of life. According to data from the Federal Reserve and Consumer Finance reports from 2025 and 2026, married and cohabiting women exhibit significantly higher consumer debt stress compared to other demographics when household incomes compress. This is because when a household budget tightens, the fixed bills must be paid, but the cost of sustaining the family's daily peace gets absorbed by the woman's personal line of credit. You are not buying luxury items. You are using your credit card as a shock absorber for the relationship. Let us look at the mathematics of this absorption. Consider a monthly leakage of just $300 in uncompensated domestic maintenance expenses over a period of 15 years. If that same $300 a month were kept in your own name and invested at a standard historical return of 8%, it would compound to over $100,000 in clean personal wealth. Instead, that capital is spent on items that disappear within a week. The relationship functions smoothly because you are funding the friction. Why do we allow this? Because the modern financial narrative tells you that keeping separate, strict tallies is ungenerous. You are told that in a true partnership, everything balances out in the end. But it does not balance out. The partner who absorbs the daily micro expenses is systematically giving up their compounding capital. You are trading your future financial optionality for immediate emotional harmony. The credit card balance creeps up not because you lack discipline, but because you are running a small, unacknowledged charity inside your own home. What happens to your savings rate when you are the default funder of domestic peace? It drops to zero. This leakage is driven by a deep conflict of identity. You cannot separate your financial decisions from your desire to be perceived as a supportive, loving partner. When your partner is stressed about money, your instinct is to step in. You offer to cover the utility bill this month. You pay for the weekend getaway because he had a hard week at work. You convince yourself that this is a temporary investment in the relationship. But this is where the care penalty mutates into direct financial vulnerability. According to data from the Center for European Policy Studies in 2026, the care penalty reflects billions in foregone potential earnings due to unbalanced household distributions. When you use your income to protect your partner's emotional state, you are participating in an unequal trade. His capital remains intact, protected, and available for investment or career risks. Your capital is converted into emotional peace for the household. You are buying stability for the collective unit at the direct expense of your individual sovereignty. How many times have you justified a shared expense on your personal card by telling yourself that it is for the family? Every time you make that choice, you are validating a system that counts your contributions as love and his contributions as capital. The problem compounds when we look at the reality of long-term wealth building. Wealth is not built from what you earn. It is built from what you retain. When you absorb the relational debt, your ability to retain capital is destroyed. Imagine two professionals with identical incomes of $85,000 a year. One partner retains 20% of their income because their daily operational expenses are subsidized by the relationship. The other partner retains nothing because they are constantly covering the logistical leaks. Over 20 years, assuming a modest growth rate, the first partner accumulates a private portfolio worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The second partner has a mountain of credit card statements and a vague sense of resentment. They started at the exact same place, but the structural division of expenses created a massive wealth gap within the same household. Why do we ignore this? Because admitting that your relationship is financially extractive feels like a betrayal of love. We prefer to look at our empty savings account and blame our own habits. We blame the occasional clothing purchase or the subscription we forgot to cancel. But those are distractions. The real drain is the structural subsidy you are providing every single day. Are you managing a relationship, or are you financing it? The distinction is absolute. When you look at your credit card bill at the end of the month, ask yourself how many of those transactions were made to keep someone else comfortable. The tragedy of relational debt is that it is completely voluntary and driven by good intentions. You do it because you want to be a good partner. You do it because you want your home to feel peaceful. But peace that is bought with your financial future is an illusion. It is a high-interest loan that you will eventually have to pay back with your own freedom. When you constantly step in to smooth over the financial cracks, you prevent the relationship from developing a real, equitable structure. You become a financial buffer, protecting your partner from the true cost of the lifestyle you are living together. This is not partnership. This is a quiet, ongoing transfer of wealth from the person who cares the most to the person who cares the least about the balance sheet. Sarah, 39, stands in the grocery aisle checking her bank balance. She has a $75,000 income and a master's degree. Yet she is choosing between organic produce and paying her credit card minimum. Her husband has a matching $75,000 income. His personal trading account is up 40% this year. Sarah feels like an absolute failure. She assumes she is simply bad with money. She blames her skincare routine and her morning coffee habits. But the leakage is structural, not behavioral. She has fallen into an invisible financial arrangement where she funds the daily friction of their shared life, while his capital remains completely protected. It happens through the quiet accumulation of unshared operational costs. When they first moved in together, they agreed to split the fixed expenses down the middle. They split the rent, the car payment, and the utilities evenly. It seemed entirely fair on paper. But fixed expenses are only half of a household's true cost. The other half consists of elastic, highly visible daily needs. Sarah handles the groceries, the school supplies, the home decor updates, the birthday gifts for family, and the cleaning supplies. None of these items have a fixed monthly contract. They are fluid, constant, and immediate. Because they happen in $40 increments at the supermarket or $50 transactions online, they do not trigger a domestic discussion. They are absorbed directly into Sarah's personal checking account or her everyday credit card. Her partner's money stays in large, clean blocks that are easy to track and invest. Hers is ground down into financial dust by the daily maintenance of their relationship. Let us look at the mathematics of this baseline leakage. Consider a monthly uncompensated domestic maintenance drain of just $400 over a 15-year marriage. If Sarah retained that $400 a month and placed it into a low-cost index fund compounding at a standard historical rate of 8%, she would accumulate over $135,000 in personal, sovereign wealth. Instead, that capital was entirely consumed by paper towels, organic chicken, children's shoes, and household birthday parties. The relationship functions smoothly because Sarah is privately subsidizing the inflation of their lifestyle. Why do women allow this asymmetry to persist? Because the psychological cost of auditing a partner feels higher than the financial cost of absorbing the bill. We are conditioned to believe that keeping a strict tally within a relationship is ungenerous, sterile, and cold. You tell yourself that everything will balance out in the long run, but it never balances out. The partner who absorbs the daily micro-expenses is systematically donating their compounding wealth to the emotional comfort of the household. You are trading your future financial optionality for immediate domestic peace. This mechanism is reinforced by a deep conflict of identity. A woman's sense of being a good partner or a present mother is culturally tethered to her willingness to smooth over logistical and emotional friction. When the household runs out of essentials, or when a child needs a specific uniform for a school event, the problem demands an immediate solution. Waiting to discuss the expense, negotiate the split, or request a bank transfer creates relational tension. To avoid that tension, to prove that she is a capable, supportive, and low-maintenance partner, Sarah simply swipes her card. According to data from the Federal Reserve and Consumer Finance reports from 2025 and 2026, married and cohabiting women exhibit significantly higher consumer debt stress compared to unmarried women with identical income profiles. This stress is not caused by reckless personal indulgence. It is the direct result of using private credit lines as a shock absorber for collective family life. The credit card balance rises because she is running an unacknowledged, nonprofit logistical enterprise inside her own home. She is protecting her partner's emotional peace and investment capacity by converting her own income into disposable household peace. The long-term consequence of this arrangement is a hidden wealth divergence within the same home. Wealth is not a function of what you earn. It is an absolute function of what you are allowed to retain. When you absorb the relational debt, your structural ability to retain capital is fundamentally compromised. Imagine two professionals sharing a home, both earning $85,000. One partner retains 25% of their net income because their daily life is quietly subsidized by the other's logistical management. The second partner retains 0% because her income is constantly leaking into the domestic ecosystem. Over a 20-year period, assuming standard asset growth, the first partner accumulates a private portfolio worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The second partner is left with an empty savings account, an escalating sense of financial anxiety, and deep resentment. They started at the exact same financial baseline, but the unequal division of invisible expenses created a massive wealth gap under the very same roof. We ignore this reality because admitting that a relationship is financially extractive feels like a profound betrayal of love. We prefer to look at our lack of savings and blame our personal discipline. We focus on the minor wellness subscription or the clothing purchase we made last month. But those are emotional distractions. The real drain is the structural subsidy you provide every single day to maintain the appearance of a balanced life. Why does this systemic drain continue unchecked? It persists because the financial industry evaluates women through a framework built entirely for corporate logic, completely ignoring the complex psychological tax of relationship dynamics. When you look at traditional advice, it suggests that the solution is simply to create an explicit expense spreadsheet with your partner. They tell you to sit down, divide every receipt, and declare your boundaries. But this approach is fundamentally flawed. It fails to recognize that negotiating every single domestic item introduces massive friction into your daily life. Why doesn't the spreadsheet method work for relational debt? It doesn't work because it treats a deeply emotional, structural issue as if it were a simple accounting error. The cost of having a tense conversation about who bought the laundry detergent feels infinitely higher than the $20 it costs to just tap your credit card and make the problem vanish. You choose to absorb the cost because your mind calculates that $20 is a cheap price to pay for 24 hours of domestic harmony. Let us look at how this dynamic alters your relationship with wealth generation. When your personal income is constantly eroded by these shared logistical leaks, your risk tolerance disappears. A person who is constantly using their credit card to buffer a family's daily lifestyle cannot afford to take professional risks. You cannot confidently ask for a promotion, pivot your career, or invest in volatile assets when you are carrying the silent weight of unshared operational bills. Your partner, whose capital is completely insulated from these daily microtransactions, feels financially secure, confident, and free to take long-term risks. They see their growing investment portfolio and assume it is the result of superior personal discipline. They do not realize that their wealth accumulation is being directly subsidized by your unacknowledged cash leakage. Are you actually less capable of building wealth, or are you simply funding the structural safety net that allows someone else to thrive? The financial gap between partners in a long-term relationship is rarely an income problem. It is almost always an accumulation problem driven by an unequal division of hidden expenses. The psychological justification for this behavior runs incredibly deep. You tell yourself that this is what a supportive partner does. You look at your partner's stress levels and decide that your financial sacrifice is a form of care. But let us look at the case of Elena, a 42-year-old corporate director earning $90,000 a year, who took a radically different path. For the first 7 years of her marriage, Elena operated under the exact same hidden subsidy system. Her credit card carried an average balance of $5,000, entirely driven by unshared grocery upgrades, children's seasonal activities, and home decor items meant to make their shared space feel serene. Her husband's personal savings grew by 12% annually because his contributions were strictly limited to the fixed mortgage payment. One evening, Elena stopped managing the friction. She did not start an argument. She simply stopped using her personal credit line to absorb the household's elastic expenses. When the shared grocery account ran out of funds, she let the fridge go empty. When the children needed new sports gear, she did not quietly buy it at midnight. She forwarded the invoice to her husband's personal email. The initial result was intense domestic discomfort. Her partner was forced to confront the true operational cost of their lifestyle for the very first time. He had to experience the immediate friction of a $40 transaction at the supermarket and an $80 bill for school supplies. But over the next 3 years, the structural balance of their household completely shifted. By refusing to act as the default financial shock absorber, Elena eliminated her consumer debt entirely. She redirected that uncompensated cash leakage into her own retirement account, accumulating $42,000 in sovereign wealth in less than 36 months. Her marriage survived, but the terms of the relationship changed. Her partner did not love her less. He simply stopped treating her income as an invisible utility bill. Elena's success came because she recognized a fundamental truth about relationships. Sponsoring a lifestyle you cannot afford to maintain individually does not protect your partnership. It simply guarantees your eventual financial dependence. The primary emotional obstacle to making this shift is the profound psychological phenomenon known as validation externalization. We use our personal money to purchase a sense of safety, belonging, and moral righteousness within our families. When you pay for the premium streaming services, the organic groceries, or the spontaneous family dinners out of your own pocket, you are not just purchasing goods. You are buying the internal identity of being a generous, low-maintenance, and loving provider. This is where the trap closes completely. The personal finance industry tells you that your debt is a sign of personal indulgence, which triggers intense shame. To soothe that shame, you work harder and become even more accommodating in your relationship, which deepens the relational debt. It is a vicious, self-sustaining loop. You are using your capital to solve an emotional identity crisis, but you are trying to fix it by destroying your own balance sheet. This is the exact point where you must transition from identifying the leakage to installing an absolute structural boundary. To stop paying for emotional peace with your financial independence, you must implement a system of clean accounting that removes the emotional taxation from your daily logistics. The first step requires establishing a dedicated joint operational account funded strictly by a proportional income split, not a 50-50 allocation of fixed bills. If you earn $85,000 and your partner earns $85,000, the contribution is equal, but the execution must change. Every single elastic domestic expense, from the paper towels to the children's sneakers, must be paid exclusively from this shared account. If the shared account runs out of capital on the 25th of the month, the operational lifestyle stops until the next deposit cycle. You must commit to a clear rule. What you do this week defines your baseline. This week, you will audit your personal credit card statements from the last 3 months. Isolate every shared micro-expense you absorbed to maintain domestic harmony, and calculate the exact total. The criterion for success is a $0 balance of shared relational expenses on your personal line of credit by the end of the next billing cycle. When you establish this system, you will quickly face new structural choices as your financial sovereignty returns. As your savings rate recovers and your personal investment account begins to grow, you will encounter the pressure of lifestyle expansion. Your partner may suggest upgrading your living space or taking more frequent vacations, assuming that your newfound financial ease means the collective budget can expand. This is the next truncheon of relational debt. You must protect your compounding capital with the exact same discipline you use to stop the initial leakage. True partnership is not defined by your willingness to dilute your long-term security to fund a temporary lifestyle upgrade. It is defined by two self-sustaining individuals who refuse to let emotional guilt dictate their financial trajectory. This is not financial advice. Every situation is different. Sarah sits at her kitchen island at midnight. The screen of her laptop glows brightly, but the scene has completely changed from where we began. Her personal savings account is no longer empty. The balance is growing, compounding in her own name at an unbroken rate. The joint statement sits open beside her, completely balanced, with every single domestic expense accounted for and split transparently at the source. Her partner's account is also open, and for the first time, it reflects the true, unvarnished cost of the life they are building together. The air in the room is not tense. It is remarkably calm. The silent, creeping exhaustion that used to live in her chest has evaporated, replaced by the quiet confidence of a sovereign operator. She looks at the numbers on the screen and realizes she did not have to stop being a loving, present partner to protect her future self. She simply had to stop financing the friction. By refusing to absorb the unacknowledged costs of daily maintenance, Sarah did not destroy her relationship. She saved it from the corrosive weight of unexpressed resentment. The choice before you tonight does not require a dramatic domestic confrontation or an emotional ultimatum. It simply requires you to look at your personal balance sheet and acknowledge the truth of what you see. You can continue to use your future freedom to buy temporary harmony today, or you can build a structure that respects both your relationship and your autonomy. You have the information. The decision is yours.